Hi, I'm Vikta Paulo, and you're tuned into The Griot in Me.
Hi everyone, my name is Andy and you are on the Griot in Me channel. Today, I have the pleasure to meet Vikta Paulo, a great influencer, a host, a community leader in the city of Ottawa. Vikta, how you doing, man?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank
a lot
you.
of kind words.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. It's a real pleasure. I think we're going to have a great time talking to each other, and we're going to make sure that the people know who Vikta Paulo is, your vision, what you do in life, and what you do in the community. So let's do this.
I think it's going to be great. I mean, last time we saw each other, Underground Challenge, and that was when
Exactly.
Beat Out was fun.
Exactly.
So it was very, I think one of the best events that was in the Ottawa-Gatineau region in the last couple of years.
He said it. He said it. A great basketball event. We really had fun. It was a great ending also.
It was.
So yeah, we're gonna get into it. First of all, where are you from and when did you arrive in Canada?
I'm from Nairobi, Kenya is where I was born, but my family is from Uganda. We're from the east end of the continent of Africa, right by the Horn. We moved here to Canada in 1990 originally, lived in the south, and then eventually we moved to Orleans. And, we've been in Ottawa since, 1990. It's been, 30 years it's going to be, oh my goodness, this June, it's going to be our 30-year anniversary of being in this country. So, wow, I think about it, that's a long time.
Yeah, it is. It sure is. So when you first came here, how old were you?
I was 1990, so I was probably 4, turning 5 when I moved here. So it was, but when I moved here, I spoke Swahili, only Swahili. I didn't speak any English at all. It was, and it was different. It was, I don't really remember the flight and all that per se as much, but I remember growing up initially in Ottawa at the beginning, and it was a transition. You have a funny name that people can't pronounce. You can't speak the language, let alone understand the language. So it was very, very, an uphill battle. But all good things, come with difficulty and adversity, of course.
Yeah, but you had to overcome them, and I'm pretty sure you did. What challenge did you face as an immigrant in this country? And how did you overcome them?
The language. For me, that was, the first thing that I had was an issue. I was in ESL until I was in grade 5, grade 6. Believe it or not, I do public speaking, almost every day as part of my, as one of my professions. And you wouldn't believe that English is a language which I struggled with so much. But, for me, it was a language. The cultural adjustments, life at home, as you know, in an African household is different than life outside the doors. So, learning and adjusting to that. But I think looking back at things now, I'm very grateful that my parents were able to instill those values in us. Everything they instilled us at home, how you carry yourself outside the home, remembering who you are and where you're from. And when you're a child, you don't really understand the importance of it growing up. It's like, why can't I be like my neighbors, or why can't I be like the kids down the street? But, you realize that that's because your name is Vikta Paulo Magisha. That's why you got to carry yourself a little bit differently. It's because, I'm the only Vikta Paulo Magisha in the world. And, our family, that name Magisha, you can trace back to Barara, Kampala, Uganda, where we're from. So, these kind of importance, you realize the value of it when you're older, now that I'm a father and now I have my own children and seeing how, what life presents to you. So I'm very grateful that I was able to have that, experience with that African Canadian household.
Amazing. You said it will be almost 30 years that you're in the country.
30 years this summer.
What would you say is the biggest change that you noticed in the city of Ottawa since you were young?
I remember when I grew up, there was a huge sense of community. When I grew up, I remember in Uplands, 3225 Uplands Drive, shouts out Side Ottawa. When I grew up over there in Uplands, there used to be tons of community events. I remember we used to have block parties shut down the street. I remember they used to have big sporting events going on right by the community center opposite the IGA. But then now I feel like as we grow older, as time goes on, technology evolves, people get away more from that group community mentality, and it goes more back to the individual. So that's probably one thing I've seen that's been a real big difference.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about your job as a public speaker, as a host? Tell us more about that. How did it start, and what is it a passion for you?
So for me, public speaking is something which I fell upon. It's not something which I was like, hey, I want to start public speaking. Always growing up, I always talked. I was always someone who was I'm more of the social type. So I remember when I was going to Algonquin College, where I took the Small Medium Enterprise Management program that I graduated from, I ended up seeing an advertisement sign to be the announcer for the Algonquin men's basketball team and women's. And at the time, a lot of my friends played for the varsity basketball team. And this was right before they went upon their greatest run in their school history for the men's basketball program, in recent history, where they finished bronze, third nationally overall. So before that, I just applied for the role. I said, hey, let me give this job a try. A lot of my friends, when I played video games with them, when I used to beat them in basketball, I used to beat them and I used to, talk trash in an announcer voice. So that's how, they used to be like, yo, just do that announcer voice, which you used to do. So I went and auditioned, and I started announcing for Algonquin. And then next year, I did all of Algonquin's sports, from volleyball to soccer, basketball as well. And next thing you know, I ended up announcing for the Carleton Ravens. And then, from there,
I think it's the best basketball team in the city.
Carleton Ravens is actually one of the best basketball programs in North America over the last 20 years. They've won the amount of championships they've won in that period of span of time. No other program has been able to match that at the level that they've done it as well. So I think being able to be a part of that program, a part of that winning culture for the 8 seasons that I was, it's invaluable. You learn a lot of great things. And that experience I learned there helped kind of take my career to further levels. Now, last March I was in Peru announcing, doing the Pan Am Games over there as well. And this March I'll be going to Bogota, Colombia. So announcing has given me the ability to see the world. I got to see the Pacific Ocean for the first time in my life. So, a lot of great things that announcing has given me the opportunity to do. NBA All-Star when I was in Toronto, I got to be part of that as well. Got to see Kobe Bryant when he was there. Yeah. That was really cool. And, I got to do a lot of really cool things. For me, what I think I really pride myself on, what announcing allowed me to do is it allows me to connect with the youth. It allows me to connect with those young African kids with the funny last names and the funny names no one can pronounce. And then when I'm able to pronounce their name, they're like, yo, how could you pronounce my name? And I show them my last name, and they're like, whoa, that's your last name? So it's, those kind of things is, allowing these kids to, the small interactions with them just gives them that little bit of pride and, having pride in their name, having pride in who they are. Small little interactions, can make a lasting impact on someone young's life, So that's what I really pride myself on, what announcing has allowed me to do.
Nice. So you said that you went to the Pan Am Games. You started only with basketball, but the season after you were in soccer and volleyball. How did your work change or evolve over the years of being a host? So it's not only basketball, you do more.
That's the thing. So, I'm actually doing para powerlifting in Colombia next month when I'm there. But at the same time, on March 1st, I'll be at Heritage College doing their final home game of the season. And, a couple weeks after that, I'll be doing Ottawa Next Level local club teams games. And next weekend, I'll actually be here at Notre Dame High School doing Canada Top Flight Academies, the National Preparatory Association, which is a prep league here in Canada. They have teams all the way from the east coast of BC to the west coast in Halifax. They actually have a league which is in their 4th season, and Ottawa has a team by the name of Top Flight Academy. And I'm actually their main announcer, so I get to do all of their games when they host sessions. So all the teams from across the country fly into Ottawa, and they have about 16 games in 3 days, something along those sorts. So I get to be the voice of that as well.
That's really cool. So having to travel that much, having to meet so many teams, so many coaches, what did those things taught you about your work, or what did your work taught you that you thought you never knew, or in another field of life that only work?
Honestly, I think the cool thing about announcing and doing everything is when I created my own business, Vikta Paulo Incorporated, that's the business I created that allowed me to kind of, when I do all my contracts for all the big events that I do, it really, I think when I grew up as a kid, I used to never tell people my name was Vikta Paulo. I used to always say my name is Vikta Paulo because it's easier for people to say Vikta Paulo, right? But I would never take pride in my name, Vikta Paulo Bina Magisha. So I think being able to put my name and put a stamp on it, and then now knowing my name and my brand is known around the world, that's something which I had no idea I had the power of doing. If you would have told myself at 8 years old when I was in ESL class, struggling with English, hating the English language, you know, being so frustrated and disappointed that I didn't understand what was going on. If you were to tell me that, you know, fast forward 30 years later, you know, that you're going to be someone who's internationally known for your voice talents in the language of English, I'll tell you, get out of here. You know what I mean? And I feel like in this world and in this life, you're never really shown your value almost until you're gone almost, which is really sad. So I really like the fact that this job and this ability to be a voice gives me the ability to help kids see value in themselves. And, you know, I think that for me is a really big thing, is being able to patch the torch to the next generation.
Okay. So you said you were struggling with English and you never gave up. Your English is pretty good right now. And I think all the people at home can tell how good your English is. You never gave up. And earlier you said that you went to Toronto. You talked about Kobe a little, which is one of the biggest role model for me personally. Now I want to know about you. Who inspires you? Who motivates you? Like, you're able to meet a lot of athletes, a lot of a young athlete. I'm pretty sure that goes through a lot. So you meet a lot of inspiring people, but you personally, who inspires you or motivates you the most?
Personally, honestly, the people who inspire me, motivate me the most, I'm gonna have to say are my parents. My mom, my dad, you know, they're the ones who made me. They're the ones who gifted me with the abilities that I have. And they're the ones who really encourage me throughout my whole life, through my downs, and more of my downs. You know, my parents were always there for me, always pick me up and always encourage me. I remember when I was in grade 4, we did public speaking in English class. And public speaking, as I said, was something which, you know, I struggled with. And the speech which I chose to do was Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech. And in order for me to practice for that speech, I remember every day after school, I used to stand in the front of my house, like in the entranceway, and my family was in the living room, and I'd have to recite the speech. But then what that would do is, you know, you have to say it loud, clear, pronunciate your voice, you know, and all of those things, and memorize the speech as well. So small things like that, you know, really, you know, helped me be the person I am today, learning how to properly speak, you know, speak with your diaphragm, as they say in acting school, you know. So it's something which, you know, my parents taught me at a young age, and they really helped encourage and instill it in me. And even when I struggled, they helped me through it. You know, my mom won the Governor General's Award for volunteering. And I think that speaks to, you know, how I love to just give back, volunteer my time, you know, almost give more time than I even have available, more times than not. But, you know, I'm always someone who I like to be able to give, because I know that if it wasn't for the people who helped me when I was growing up, if I didn't have those people like my mom and dad in my corner, there's a lot of kids who don't have a mom or a dad or a mom-dad to help them out. So, you know, if you could kind of be that person who could be that little bit of inspiration for them, you know, for what my parents did for me, it sucks that some kids don't have that ability. And on top of having that, they're first generation African in Ottawa, Ontario, you know, on top of everything else. So, I mean, that's why for me, my big motivating factor of being able to give back in the way that I do is because, you know, my parents helped me break through from being in a country where I didn't know the language, didn't know the environment, to being able to be a post-secondary graduate, high school graduate, and successful entrepreneur that I am today. So,
when you were young, did you know that you had it in you to be a public speaker?
I did not know I had the Griot in me. To be honest, it's something which I really, like I said, public speaking was something which was something which was actually scary, you know, and I was never confident in public speaking. It was at a later age where I became more confident in the language, became more confident in my ability in the language. So, you know, it's not something which came naturally. It's not something which I just woke up one day and the lights turned on. You know, it took a lot of trial and error. You know, I've been announcing since 2006, 2007 season. So, you know, that's almost 15 years I've been doing this. And, you know, every year you learn something new. And I think the cool thing is I got to work alongside the Raptors announcer, Herbie Kuhn. He's my, like, announcing mentor. It's funny, him and I both started at the same college, at Vanier College in Montreal. It's where he started as well. And then
With
now,
the Cheetahs.
The Vanier Cheetahs. So, over there, I got to announce their basketball games, when I was over there. And then I came back to Ottawa and I did Algonquin's games. But being able to meet him at the Pan Am Games, work alongside him at the Pan Am Games, learn how he goes about his craft, learn about how he goes through his preparation. I think that was so amazing because, he's a world champion Toronto Raptors announcer, right? So
Yeah, he is.
I got to learn from him right on his side. So I think that is really neat, being able to get those kind of opportunities.
So you've been in the city a long time. Is there one thing that you love about the city the most? What is it?
What do I love about the city? I'm going to say it's the people. The people of Ottawa. I really do. Because, this is where I grew up. It's where a lot of my, first things happened. My first football game happened here in Ottawa. High school I went to here in Ottawa. Went to Gloucester High School, home of the Gators. Shouts out GHS. Went to Algonquin here in Ottawa. I'm an Algonquin Thunder alumni. Go Thunder. So with all of that, everything which, I've almost done in my life milestone-wise, it started here in Ottawa. So, for me, the people who were involved in my different levels, going through from whether or not it was my high school football coach, Jeff Hamlin. He was someone who is like a father figure kind of guy. He really taught you the importance of things like being a man, being accountable, being responsible, which of course your dad teaches you at home, right? But, as a 16, 17, 18-year-old boy, ask anyone, they don't listen. I can tell you that myself. So, sometimes you got to hear different messages many times that are the same from different people, but being able to hear that from someone like my coach Hamlin, that really helped shape who I am as, a person today. So, a lot of people in the city were really influential. My older brother, he's someone who does a lot of football coaching here in Ottawa as well. He won the Russ Jackson Award for his involvement for what he does while he was at York University as well. But he's someone who teaches right here at Ottawa Tech locally. And he does a lot of coaching with football programs as well over the last 15, 20 years, So, people like him being in my corner of influence, that stuff which, I wouldn't be able to be where I was if it weren't for those kind of people in the city.
Yeah. So again, about the people, because the Griot in me, those videos are very oriented through the people. What advice would you give the younger generation in Ottawa?
Be yourself. Be yourself. Embrace your culture. Embrace who you are, where you came from. Because without being comfortable in your skin right now, without embracing where you've come from, it's very hard to know where you're going to go. And I think that's very important for me. I think my life really started progressing and I started really reaping the rewards of what life has to offer when I really embraced who I was as an individual, as, embracing my African background, and knowing that I am in present an African Canadian, embracing that side of who I am as well. And it's helping me move forward in everything that I want to do, being a father, being a community leader, being an announcer, everything.
Some people find it hard to be Black in the community in North America, or more precisely in Canada, Ottawa. What do you have to say to them, like those Black young generation or Black people that think it's hard, that for them they're going through a hard time? What would you say to them?
It's not a cakewalk, right? It's hard. Like I said, I know I always go back to I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for the people of influence in my corner that I had growing up. But I honestly believe, if you don't have the right people in your corner, it's very tough to be able, as a young male, speaking to myself, I can't speak to being a young female because I wasn't a young female, but to be a young Black male, young African Black male, first generation in Ottawa growing up, it's hard. I remember when I moved to Orleans afterwards, after a while I was in grade 11, and when you do a lot of, if you move around, go to Toronto, do a bunch of trips, I spoke proper English, right? Because that's what I do, is I speak proper English. I don't speak with slang or vernacular, as they say. But I think that was, at the time, in the cultures, it wasn't reflected positively, right? You speak like a white guy. Why do you talk like that? Why do you talk so proper? But it's that same proper talking that's allowed me to be an international name and a voice that's known around the world, right? So you got to learn to be comfortable in your own skin, because if you're not comfortable in your own skin, then whatever other people try to tell you or mold you to, you're going to be that. So if I was someone who wasn't comfortable in my skin than I was, and someone says, why do you talk like a white guy? Why do you talk so proper? Then I would have started speaking with slang all of a sudden. I would have thrown away my proper English, and I would have started speaking with not proper words. And then where would that have gotten me, right? What direction, what trajectory my life have taken? So I really feel like, you know, it's hard for Black youth because when you turn on the television, you put on any YouTube rap video, go on Instagram, any rap video that's out, there's a certain culture right now that's being perpetuated. And I'm not going to pretend like, you know, I'm from some high mighty castle, like, oh, there's a culture right now and these kids are out of hand and the world's going down in fire. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, I listened to 3 6 Mafia, I listened to, you know, a whole bunch of music that was considered wild, and people were like, you know, you kids are going to hell because you listen to the music you listen to. But I think it's okay to listen to music. It's okay to embrace certain types of cultures, but I think it's also important to know who you are, because one thing about kids that are kids is they're so easily influenced. That's why you're not allowed to vote till you're like 18. That's why you're not allowed to buy alcohol in Ontario until you're 19, cigarettes until you're 19, is because they want you to be able to make an educated decision about what you're doing for your life, because prior to that, your brain's still developing. So things that are flashy and shiny look like the best option to a 14-year-old boy, because that's just what it is, right? And the hard road, doing the right thing, is not appealing. I'll tell you, it wasn't appealing to me. I'll tell you that right now. You know, so that's the thing, is that I'm very realistic about it, because I know when I was their age, I know that it was 100 times easier to make the wrong decision, 100 times easier to be that stereotype, 100 times easier to, you know, not do what's right by your parents, by your ancestors, right? If we get a little deeper, right? So it's a lot, you know. It all starts with being able to, and I'm going back to it, embrace who you are, where you're from, to know where you want to go. Because without that, the wind can take you in any direction, and it's a dangerous time that we're in.
And that's what we try to do with the Griot in me, to know where you're from. And a Griot, it's a West African storyteller that was there to make sure that the stories or the tradition of a village or of a community get passed to the next generation, and those traditions don't die. How important it is to have certain Griot in our community right now in 2020?
I think it's more important than ever, because, like I said, I think the one thing that we're missing in Ottawa right now is that sense of community. I feel like there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things right now. Manak, head coach of La Cité, he does a lot of great things with his presidential, which is his brand that he has. So he does a lot of training, one-on-one work with the kids in the community. Does outstanding work with what he does. You know, and that's just one of many people. There's Mohammed Sofa at Britannia Woods Community House, and all the work that he's doing with his team there. Phenomenal work, but that's just one of, you know, many people. And I think that if we have more people doing a little bit to help better their community, and I think if we work like a hive community versus in our own individual, you know, 100-yard dashes, not to say that's what people are doing, but I feel like there's so many different organizations in Ottawa. There's so many different programs in Ottawa that are available for Black youth. Like Andy Waterman, who's been running the Ottawa Phoenix basketball community for decades now. I mean, he's done phenomenal work with the community. But I mean, I feel like, you know, if there would be more younger Black males who could volunteer their time to help out with that, for example, it would be a lot more beneficial, because he can only do so much, right? Like, he's only one person, and he has people that help out, but I feel like, you know, if there were more, it would be better. And this goes not just for his organization, but this goes with for Minox, for example. If there were more people who could volunteer their time, with Mohammed Sofa, if there were more people who could just volunteer their time, I think that we'd be better off as a community. But it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's easy. Just give 6 hours of your time, just give 5 hours of your time. It's not easy. We all have commitments. You know, I have a wife and daughter at home. I have a family to take care of. I have a 9-to-5 job I have to commit to, right? So it's a whole lot of things that come. Then we get bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on, right? We can always make excuses. But I think the one thing for me, which is tough, is what do you say to yourself when you open the newspaper and you see another young African teen was murdered in our nation's capital? not died in our nation's capital at a young age, murdered. This is cold blood. This is, in any religious book, like the cardinal sin, a young life being taken away, right? What are we doing to change that narrative? What are we doing to help that next teen who can maybe have his narrative change? What are we doing? And I think it's easy to sit back in our glass houses and be like, well, I don't live in Richie. Well, I don't live in Deborah. Well, I don't live in Uplands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so easy. I don't live in Overbrook. So easy to just sit back and be like, well, that's not my people. That's not where I'm from. But at the end of the day, like, what are you going to do when your kid is visiting their friend in that neighborhood and is a victim of violence that wasn't intended to go their way? Then you're going to be upset. Then it's something that should have changed. But I think if we could do something to get ahead of it, if we could do something as a community to get ahead of changing the narrative of our youth, I think that's going to be something that's a lot bigger. And honestly, it's not something that's going to be an overnight thing. I don't know what it is. I don't have the solution, but I do know that if we, as I'm going to say, like the young leaders, like, because this is in 5-10 years, we're going to be the ones driving the ship. We're going to be the ones leading that car, right? So I think if we don't start taking that initiative today on how we're going to change that narrative for our youth, it's going to be too late, because technology's only become more technology. There's going to be more Instagram, there's going to be more Twitter, there's going to be more Snapchats, more TikToks. You know what I mean?
TikTok,
and then next thing you know, we just get lost in the social media world, Donald Trump's tweets, and then we just forget about our young brother who just passed away in the beginning of January in cold blood in downtown Ottawa, right? So for me, this is what I feel like, while the wounds are still fresh. You know, we just buried Ryan just right down the street in the summertime, got murdered Canada Day, downtown here in Ottawa. A young man who had the pleasure of coaching at St. Patrick's High School. Very kind heart, very good soul. You know, just very beautiful inside. Like, he had so much love to give. And to know that he died in cold blood downtown breaks my heart. And my thing is, what are we doing to change that narrative? What are we doing to help these youth as big brothers our age? Like, what are we doing? And I think that that's the real big question that we got to ask ourselves, because if we just sit back and we just sit in our glass houses and say, well, you know what? I don't go clubbing. I'm not involved in gun violence. That's not my problem. Well, I don't rent Airbnbs. I don't go to Airbnb parties. It's not my problem. You know, I really feel like we've been doing too much of that. And I think it's time for us to really do something more proactive and really be there physically to help guide these kids.
Oh, definitely. And I personally agree with you. Those were some very, very wise words. And I hope the people at home will love to hear what you just said. And it was a pleasure to talk to you, Vikta, for real. I had a great time listening to you.
Thank you.
You speak with so much wiseness when you speak, and it's amazing to listen to a great community leader that was there before I was in the city and doing work before I was even born, probably. So thank you very much for coming with us, and we had a great time. So I'm gonna leave you with the final words here to the people at home, and say what you want.
I guess my big thing is, I guess as Black people, I'll speak to Black people because that's who I am. I can't speak to any other kind of people. I think Black males, more specifically, if I can just really get down to the nitty gritty, I think we got to do more to better ourselves as a people, and we got to love ourselves a lot more, and we got to forgive ourselves a lot more too, right? Like, I think if we give ourselves more love, more forgiveness, and more empathy towards each other, I think that we'll be heading in a better direction. Because what you guys got to realize is your Black brother right beside you, to the left and your right, I promise you, is going through the same 9.9 out of 10 issues that you're going through. But now imagine all three of you put your minds together about how you can overcome these issues, versus three of you trying to go at each other over the same things, which are not even relevant issues. I think that's the big change we got to make as a shift as Black people. Instead of trying to be a crab in a bucket, pulling each other down, oh, he's doing better than me, we pull him down and get on top of him. I think we got to help each other out, put a hand out to help that brother get that stepping stone to get himself up there. Then when he's up there, he's going to get a hand down to help pull you up to get up there. And then now you're both at the top. I think that's the mentality we got to embrace more, instead of trying to just pull each other down, because at the end of the day, we're not going to progress anywhere if this is the same direction that we're heading in. And I think this is a call out to every single person who's a big bro in the city of Ottawa. If you call yourself someone who is invested in the community, if you're someone who wants to do better in the community, just volunteer. Just take your time, reach out to your local, whether it's a Boys and Girls Club, Britannia Woods Community Center, Ottawa Phoenix Basketball. I'm sure if you reach out to any of these people and you say, look, I have some time, I'd like to volunteer to come help you guys out, I doubt you're going to be denied that opportunity to help, because all these young black males need your help. They need to understand how to overcome the hurdles that you and I have been able to overcome. But as you and I both know, a lot of these hurdles we didn't realize until they slapped us in the face 100 times. We realized that that's how you get over that hurdle. So I think if we can help alleviate a lot of these things for the youth, I think that, as a black community here in Ottawa, we'd be in a lot better position looking at 2030 moving forward.
Thank you very much, Vikta. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. We have more coming. Thank you.